What we have seen globally is a tendency to violate human rights of indigenous peoples, not only taking over their lands, but depriving them of their livelihoods for the purpose of putting in mass corporate agriculture undertakings for things such as oil palm production in Asia. And we're seeing with this a great deal of human poverty, many people being dispossessed of their lands and their livelihoods, and significant violations of human rights. What we're seeing in the global arena is we're seeing the expansion of a global trade in pollution, is the way that I would like to frame it here. The developed countries of the North, which are significantly polluting the earth and adding to the problem of global warming, are now entering into deals, contracts with poorer countries who are developing countries who are not creating the problem that we're seeing with global warming. And so now there is a global trade in what are called carbon credits. And this, in my estimation, has allowed polluting nations and industrial nations to continue the practices that are complicating global warming by trading in, and it's becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry, trading in carbon credits with others. The net result, of course, is that we're not addressing the problems that need to be addressed. I think right here in the state of Hawaii, we've seen some very negative impacts of biofuel production and use here. We currently have litigation in our courts that are being brought by fishermen who have lost their boats and their livelihoods because of the corrosive nature of ethanol. And this was something that was contemplated by the state for 10 years without providing any input from those who would be impacted. We also know that ethanol is costly and pollutant to create. So we're not really moving ahead any good initiative for the state of Hawaii when it comes to sustainable development. Rather, what we're doing is we're pursuing initiatives that are going to create more at the outset than if we stayed on the regular fossil fuel consumption that we had in the state. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to look at and address the energy consumption in our state, but with something that works for Hawaii. In reality, the whole ethanol initiative here was pushed by the governor as part of the Bush proposal, national proposal, but in this state it's become synonymous with an initiative to put agricultural subsidy money back into trying to reawaken the sugar industry in some way. And we don't need to go back to the old plantation era. But I think the thing is that when it comes to biofuel, we have to look at what is involved in the processing and the creation of biofuel and whether or not it interfaces with the environment and the location that is trying to adjust the energy consumptive needs, such as what we have here in Hawaii. But ethanol certainly has not assisted us here. I became involved in the energy issue several years ago right here in Hawaii because we were looking for alternative sources of energy, and at the time geothermal energy was identified as a possible fuel. However, the technology was very toxic. There was no respect of the native culture, and as a result of it, the geothermal initiatives in Hawaii, there's only been one that has ever succeeded. Now, with today's technology, geothermal can be addressed in a much less toxic way. But I also encountered the issue relating to biofuels and palm oil in the international arena because of the tragedies that it is now wreaking on indigenous peoples, and millions of indigenous peoples are being negatively impacted. I think it's safe to say that the biofuel issue has been identified by the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues as one of their primary concerns because of the extensive human rights violations that arise globally because of this. And there has been some excellent expert papers that were done. In fact, it is posted on the website of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, the expert paper done by Victoria Tauli-Corpus on palm oil industry and its impact on indigenous peoples. So there's some good data that we're bringing forward now to really make this link between this biofuel production, and it is a corporate production, and the human rights violation against indigenous peoples. I think that when I take a look at renewable energy, I always take a look at the environment and what the environment is capable of sustaining. In some areas, wind is a good alternative. In some areas, we might be looking at biomass if it interfaces appropriately and non-toxically with agricultural practices. I'm also very interested in looking at thermal exchange, such as what you see when you look at Natural Energy Lab bringing up cold water. But there are negative impacts to that as well. And this is why I'm saying that we need to look at the environment and what the environment can sustain and try to interface our biofuel initiatives with actually the locale that we're dealing with. And of course, with regards to geothermal presents, I think, a viable energy alternative for Hawaii, but it would have to be something that was done with native peoples in a culturally appropriate way, and it will have to be done in a non-toxic way. Now we have such technology in the geothermal world, such as Kalina technology and other things. I think we can look at it. I think we can implement it if it's done with the appropriate respect for the culture and the environment, and those are the two bottom lines for us in Hawaii.